Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to host this workshop for you. Whether your student's interested in the medical field, looking to get your questions answered, or just here to learn a little bit more about what our wonderful speakers do. Thank you for joining. We hope we can answer your questions and shine a little bit of light on what the medical field is like. So before we turn over to our speakers, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mission MathMinds organization here. So I'm going to share a quick little graphic for you all. Awesome. So again, welcome everyone. Feel free to turn your cameras on. I hope you guys are active in the chat to ask any questions. At the end of our session, we'll have a little bit of time for any students who have questions to get those answered as well. So, we're Mission MathMinds. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Ruby Arun. I'm the founder and CEO here at Mission MathMinds. And again, I'm so happy to have you all here. We are, as an organization, we look to empower girls in STEM with our workshops, different programs, conferences, and also volunteering opportunities to instill a sense of service in our students. So we're really excited to host these workshops. We have been trying to host workshops in all different STEM fields to really get students interested not only in learning about other STEM fields, but learn more about what they can do in college and beyond. So we're so excited. If you do have any questions about what we do, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But our website is missionmathminds.org. You can go there to learn about, if you're a student in middle or high school, how you can be part of our team or volunteer at events. And then if you're in elementary, what you can do to come to conferences and other workshops as well. So just a little bit about what our programs are. We have a couple of programs that serve not only students, but also female role models, which are leaders in our field here today. We have a series of mentoring programs, including this workshop, that explore various different STEM fields. So if you have a friend that's interested maybe in a different field in the medical field, have them check out our website and they can find a workshop that suits them. But we also have conferences that are usually hosted once a year, where students your age get to come and hear from a variety of different speakers on one day. So that's really a fun activity, fun event for students to go to, meet some really like-minded individuals, which I think is awesome for you guys. And then our female role model sector is where we have leaders just like the ones here talk a little bit about their stories. Our hope is to inspire the students listening and watching from wherever you guys are a little bit more about what the STEM field is like. And then lastly, our supporting children's education field. This is where we're more oriented in the service field. If you want to get volunteering hours, that's a great place to check out how you can help. We serve students overseas in terms of education with our book drive. So really great opportunities for you guys to be involved in. Again, our website is missionmathminds.org, so definitely check that out. So today's workshop, what we're going to be looking at, as you all know, as you probably signed up for, is to learn a lot more about the medical field. Our speakers here today are versed in two different types of medicine, research and also practicing. So they're going to shine light on the different pathways that you guys can look into when you want to get involved in the medical field. Like I said, you'll be hearing from a practicing doctor at Northwestern and a research PhD student at Michigan with totally different interests in medicine, but again, working to help patients in need. So it's really awesome what they do. And again, we're going to be talking about internships, opportunities that you can look at for college applications, different things beyond college, looking at what you as a student can do to be involved in the medical field. So really exciting stuff with this workshop today. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or speak up. That's also a really good option too. So before we get started though, we are partnering with a FREMD research project. We as an organization are always looking to see how we can improve our methods of empowering girls in STEM. So we have a research project that's ongoing to look at what the different causes are and what the effects are of students interacting with female role models. So just like this workshop. So I'm going to pop the link in the chat, and if everyone here, if you're a middle or high school girl in the Northwest suburbs, if you guys could take this survey really quick, that would be really awesome. It really helps us with figuring out what works and what doesn't work to empower you guys. So I'm going to put the link in chat really quick, and then once everyone takes this survey, I will pass it on to our speakers. Give me 1 second. All right, I put it in the survey. We'll probably get going at around 5:06, 5:07. So if you could just give me a thumbs up in the survey if you filled it out, that would be awesome. While we're waiting for our new students, do you guys mind giving a quick introduction? Um, any of you want to talk a little bit about why you're here? I'll pass it on over to the students, and then we will get started with their speakers. Feel free to just unmute um, or turn your camera on.
Hi guys, my name is Natali, and I think I'm here because I'm really interested in the medical field, and I'm a sophomore at FREM, and I really want to become a neurosurgeon, and I think being here would really help me gain knowledge in the medical field by, talking to people that are in research and other types of, research facilities and practicing clinicians.
Awesome, thank you, Matali. So just like that, I hope all of you are excited to learn more about medicine. So now I'm going to pass it on over to our speakers. I'll start with Dr. Gera if you want to do a quick introduction of who you are and why you're here. I think you're still on mute, Dr. Gera.
Sorry, I do that every time. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Anjali Gera, and I am a movement disorders neurologist at Central DuPage Hospital, which is a part of Northwestern Medicine in Winfield, Illinois, so one of the suburbs of Chicago. Far away from Palatine, but I am very familiar with that area as well. I imagine that a lot of the folks here are from the Northwest suburbs, so my parents used to live out there, very familiar with that area. I'm excited to be here and talk to all of you.
Thank you so much. And then now I'll pass it on over to Charu.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charu. I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Michigan with hopefully a focus in molecular and cellular pathology. I'm excited to talk to you about kind of the other side of the field of medicine and discuss a little bit more about what it takes to get to being a PhD student.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much to our wonderful speakers for being here, for volunteering their time. We're going to get started with, if you could each provide a really quick background, just kind of walking us through the important milestones in your career path.
Yeah, I can start. So I actually was, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, so I was not born in the Chicago area, but I came here right out of high school. So I completed high school in Kentucky and then moved to Chicago for college. I went to University of Chicago for college. I was there for 4 years, and then I took a research year, like a gap year, where I did research in a pulmonary lab. And then I went to medical school at UIC. And then I went to residency back at University of Chicago. So another 4 years there. And then I did 2 years at Rush. During that time, and also during my time at UIC, I actually rotated through various other hospitals. So I feel like I really have gotten to know all of the different hospitals, both community hospitals, VAs, and even for example, we were at Christ, at Lutheran, Cook County. So I've kind of gotten my feet wet at a lot of the different places. After I finished fellowship at Rush, I then moved to Central DuPage through Northwestern in the suburbs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Charu?
Yeah, so I've kind of been all over the place. I grew up and did elementary school in California, went to India for a couple years to do middle school. And then I moved to Texas, specifically Dallas, to do high school, and I ended up doing my undergrad at the University of Texas at Dallas in biochem. And during my undergraduate years, I was able to participate in undergraduate research at a lab at UTD, where I worked with fruit flies, looking at their genetics. And then I was also able to do a semester-long as well as a summer-long internship at the local medical center and both of those experiences really solidified my drive and desire to pursue a PhD. And so in my senior year of undergrad, I applied to many different PhD programs and ended up choosing University of Michigan with what it has to offer. And I'm currently in my first year here and very close to making a decision on what my thesis lab is going to be. So I'm excited for this big step and excited to see where this is going to lead me in the future.
Awesome. That sounds really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. As you both mentioned, you are in different, I guess, parts of the medical field. Dr. Gera is currently practicing while Charu is on the research side. Would one of you or both of you actually talk a little bit about the difference between research and then practicing and then the other parts of medicine that people might not know about?
Yeah, I can comment on that. So I actually was learning about this well into medical school, I must say. I didn't really know about all the branches, so it's very normal if you realize that you're really at the tip of the iceberg in gaining this knowledge of all the different research fields and all the different specialties and subspecialties within being a clinician. So yes, with research, there's basic science research, clinical research, translational research. Basic science is more like bench work, where you are in a lab, you may be doing experiments that, like Western blots or pipetting, this is kind of just a very, very superficial way to say it. And I'm sure that I'm making you cringe, Charu, so I apologize. You can correct me. But
not at all.
And then clinical can be more, for example, doing a project with patients, for example, getting surveys from patients, their opinion on something, or it can be really a wide variety of things, but it's called clinical research because it's involving patients directly their involvement. Translational research is actually often using animal models. So you may be using mice or rats, something where you're trying to translate findings in the lab using animal models into humans is the ultimate goal with that. So, and then with, of course, clinical practice, there are many specialties. I mean, they're actually still being created. There'll be new specialties every few years. Of course, there's the basics. Internal medicine, family medicine, neurology, which is what I went into, surgery. And then within all of those, there's many subspecialties, several of which will, after residency, that's why we do fellowship. We will go on to subspecialize in, for example, I did movement disorders after neurology, which is kind of a branch of neurology that I decided to focus on. And not everybody does that. Actually, sometimes people decide to stay more general, like a general neurologist or an internist. So there can be either or hybrids of both research and clinical work in someone's career. And most careers, from what I have seen, I kind of started off thinking that I'm going to be doing 50-50, like 50% clinical work and 50% research. I even did a master's in clinical research in my fellowship, and I was really, really excited about this. And then I ended up realizing that it's not quite practical to do in very involved research projects and do that only 50% of your time, and the other 50 being clinical work. So it kind of more falls into an 80-20 type of distribution, where you may be 80% clinical or 80% research, and then vice versa for the rest. So I guess that's a very brief summary. I'll let you also comment.
I mean, I think Dr. Gera, you did a great job of explaining the major differences as well as the different components of like the different styles of research that we have. And you're right. I mean, a lot of the faculty that I've interacted with who do have both an MD and a PhD aren't able to dedicate equal amounts of time to both aspects of their degrees. And so, like you said, it does end up becoming like a 80-20 split, where either they're spending most of their time in their offices writing grants and helping run the lab, or they're spending their time in the clinic. And I've been fortunate enough to also work under a PI who just has an MD, and he's a practicing surgeon. And so seeing how he's like able to maintain his busy schedule in the clinic while also running a lab has been a really eye-opening experience. But yeah, the different kinds of researches, as Dr. Gera mentioned, are basic, clinical, and translational, to kind of really put it broadly. And I think basic science is kind of what a lot of us are learning in schools. That's what, how does the body work? Why is it working this way? That's a lot of, if any of you guys, I can't quite remember what middle school science was like, but the basic, here's how your cells divide, and here's how some labs will study how plants grow, and we care about our genes and our genetics, and people who are studying that are typically looking at basic research questions. And ideally, the goal for most labs in today's day and age is to use this basic research and be able to translate it into something that can be used clinically, which is where a lot of the animal models, especially mice and rats, come into play. So it's a very broad spectrum and kind of hard to define into simple terms.
Thank you. The way you talk about your passions are very compelling. But obviously, all passions start somewhere. If we go back to high school, that's usually where the students here are in high school. That's where our passion kind of starts to develop, and we get more secure in what we're going to do in the future. For both of you, what really influenced you to choose medicine, or even if in high school you weren't solid on medicine, what was that kind of like for you?
I can take this one first. So I guess for me, in growing up, I always thought I was going to be a pediatrician. That was my dream job. I had little Barbies with a white coat and everything. And then I realized my sophomore year of high school in in an honors chemistry class, after doing a class project where I had to read up on something on my own and kind of do a research poster on it, that I really liked reading about things and learning about the behind the scenes. And I actually did my poster or project on an autoimmune disease that I had as a child, and kind of learning about the intricacies of that and realizing that despite knowing so much, there's still no cure didn't really make sense to me. It's like, how is it that there's so many research articles and so many papers about something, yet we still don't know how to treat it? And so that really kind of instigated the spark of, okay, there's like so much we know, but also so much we don't know. How can we know more to help cure other diseases and help people who, like myself, I mean, I was lucky enough that I don't have any of the repercussions of the disease and I grew out of it, but there are others who aren't as lucky as I am. And so kind of in the back of my mind, I always knew that this idea of research was something that I really wanted to get myself involved in. And I kind of let that fuel me into taking AP biology my senior year of high school. And again, learning about the science was what really got me hooked onto it. And I really wanted to continue just learning more and more and more. And so once I started undergrad, I picked biochem as my major because I felt that would give me the broadest scope in what I would be learning about. And like I mentioned earlier, I was able to join a lab, and that really started to solidify that this is what I wanted to do. I will say that I never really got involved on the clinical side of things. It slowly just kind of dawned onto me that my personality, I didn't think was very well fit for clinical practice. And so I put all my focus into research and looking at the more behind the scenes aspect of things.
For sure. And then Dr. Gera here, you have been both in the research side and the clinical side. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that switch influenced your career, your journey, and what your position in medicine is?
Yeah, I think to answer this question, I probably need to just give you a little bit of background about what happened before high school. I was just before high school, I was just starting eighth grade, and my mother unfortunately suffered a stroke. She was 43, so she was very young to have had a stroke. Fortunately, she survived the stroke, but she was left with a right-sided paralysis, and her ability to speak clearly was also impaired. And that's how she is today at 70. So, as an only child, I was only 12 at the time, and I had to grow up really fast and took over a lot of the responsibilities, not only in our home but accompanying her with her rehab. So I was in constant exposure and communication with her medical teams. I was, in the rehab center. I distinctly remember being there at night, after school. My dad would pick me up, take me there to see her, bring me back home. And, it kind of repeated like this for months. And it was a big kind of um, uh, a big event, that really shaped what I wanted to do moving forward with my life. I thought I was going to be a teacher leading up to then because I loved I just loved my teachers and I saw them as purely my role models. So I wanted to follow their footsteps. And but around 10th grade, I would say that that's when I knew that I wanted to become a physician. So and the seed was planted, a couple years before where I was thinking about it. So I actually chose the pre-med track from the very beginning of college. I didn't know which field of medicine I wanted to pursue. And interestingly, I think I was kind of subconsciously avoiding pursuing neurology, despite being inspired to go into medicine, while being surrounded by neurologists. And I actually never did anything in neurology in college. So I think I kind of avoided it maybe subconsciously because maybe it was too close to home. Maybe I, knew I wanted to do medicine, but didn't really want to see other patients who had gone through the same thing as my mom, perhaps. This is just my theory. There were no actual discussions about this at the time. And I was actually pretty convinced I was going to be an endocrinologist, which, mainly an endocrinologist takes care of for example, diabetes and thyroid problems, nothing like what my mom, had. Um, and then this opportunity landed in my lap of taking care of, or actually that research gap year that I mentioned after college, that was in a pulmonary lab. So I did that. Then I thought that I was going to pursue I was going to be a lung doctor. So I've kind of gone through the journey thinking that I'm going to be a surgeon, an internist, a pediatrician. That one lasted the longest. So I actually love taking care of kids. I felt it was an honor to take care of children. And so that lasted the longest and still is in my mind, where I sometimes wonder that, oh, what would life be like if I went into peds still? But my last rotation in medical school was neurology. And because I could not decide, I had already applied to, we were late into the, application cycle by the time I saw other neurologists, by the time I was on that rotation. So had applied to internal medicine, which was kind of the generic, okay, let's just do internal medicine and we'll figure this out later and we'll subspecialize later, if I want to, or just stay general too. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I realized the very first patient I saw on my neurology rotation was a stroke patient. And first day she was just like my mom. In fact, it was the same side that was affected, the right side. And then the second day and the third day, and I saw how much she was improving through the therapy and just with time too, as her brain healed. And luckily, it was a good outcome. It's not always the case, but it was magical how much she was improving. And I had seen the TPA that was being given. That's something that can be given to patients when they present with a stroke, and it can reverse the effects of the stroke. So she got it, and my mom also got it. But my mom was a little bit late in getting it because where she first went, the CT scanner was broken, and so a lot of time was lost, and she ended up having to transfer to another hospital. So she had to get the scan before she could qualify for even getting this TPA treatment for the stroke. So anyways, long story short, I realized that there is a lot that I can do for patients with neurologic conditions, and I just ran with that. And I applied for neurology very late into the application cycle. I didn't think I was going to get in because there were already interviews going on. I already had gone on interviews for internal medicine. And ultimately, it just worked out. I think my story resonated, and people seem to understand, why I went on this path, and how I ended up here. And then to answer the question about research, I never really knew if I wanted to do research or not. I knew I wanted to be a clinician because that was where everything began, was in the clinical setting, both with my mom and in my medical school rotations. That's where I was the most inspired. But I also was inspired about with research. I was curious, what else can be done for stroke patients? Can we actually regenerate brain, which we cannot do? We cannot reverse the damaging effects of a stroke once it's already done. So I did pursue research, and I realized my first two jobs were basic science, and I initially was very interested, but for me, it just didn't. The days have to feel like they are flying by. Like when you are doing something, to really, that's the gut instinct where you think that, oh, I can't believe it's already 5 o'clock, But when I was in the lab for basic science research, it didn't feel that way. It just felt very, very long. And I'm an impatient person. So I wanted instant reward, and that is not there in basic science. You have to just keep trudging along. You have to fight for the results. You have to keep going, and you will fail many times before you have success. And I understood that, but on the other hand, where in the clinical world you give the patient TPA, or now there's more that's being done for these patients where they may be taken to surgery, and then you see before your eyes the improvement. Like, that's where I was just really that was my driving factor, I would say. So I kind of shifted gears a bit, and I did a little bit of clinical research. I even did a master's in clinical research and fellowship, and I really enjoyed it. It's nothing that I didn't enjoy, but when I was with patients, the whole day flew by, and it still does. And so I just went in that direction because I realized that, again, I can't do 50-50. It wasn't really working out. I felt like one thing was suffering. If I did 50-50, I'm kind of doing both things kind of halfway. And so if I'm more clinical or almost fully clinical, which I am now, I'm probably 90% clinical and I'm doing 10% research. My days are flying by, and I love it. I'm really enjoying the day. That's why it's flying by. So
Thank you for sharing that story. It's very, very touching and inspiring. My grandpa actually, he also had a stroke, and seeing how it affects him, it's moving for a lot of people when you experience someone near and dear that goes through a stroke. So truly, thank you for sharing that. Charu, do you have an inspiring moment or something that was really unique in your journey that led you to medicine?
I think, kind of like I alluded to before, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease when I was, I think, probably a year old. And so because I was so young when I got the diagnosis, I didn't really, I don't have memories of it, except for when I started going to elementary school. I knew that there was something kind of different about me because I wasn't allowed to have the same sweets and treats and desserts and all of the things that everyone else was able to have. I was always restricted to what I could eat, and at that time, I didn't quite have an understanding as to why. I knew I was sick somehow, in some strange way, because I was taking medications, I was doing all these things, but I just didn't have that full grasp of what it was. And then in my 10th grade chemistry class, when we were given the choice, it was between either doing a book report or picking a topic of our interest and then doing a project on it, and reading up on it and kind of presenting it to the class. I researched my disease, the disease that I had, which was nephrotic syndrome. And I just learned more and more about it. I learned how there's multiple different types of this disease, and certain types end up with more kidney damage. This is a disease that affects your kidneys, and you're basically not able to retain the proteins that your body requires. And so your body is just constantly leaking all of these important proteins that you need to survive. And depending on what kind of what cells are being affected and how severe it is, you could either grow out of it, kind of like I did, or it can have major impacts on your kidney and health, and you'll end up being on things like dialysis, where you're basically a machine has to clean up your blood, and just all of these things that I didn't know about. And reading up on this, I realized, one, how lucky I was, but also two, how many other people there are like me who were impacted more drastically than I was. And so at that stage, I still hadn't quite made up my mind that a PhD is what I wanted to pursue. A part of me wanted to be a pediatrician. And going into undergrad as well, I kind of was like, okay, maybe like being a pediatrician still sounds cool. But at the end of the day, I think I just realized that more than being there and like handing or giving treatments to patients, I wanted to be the one coming up with them and being the person behind the scenes. And so I never really had the like one moment that kind of helped me make my decision. Honestly, the like program that I'm in right now is a very like translational research focused program. So I really wanted to keep that like clinical relevance in whatever I did, because that's really where I want whatever my work that I'm doing to be used in the clinic. So I never really wanted to get rid of that side of my interests. And even now I'm still seeking out different programs where I can shadow a physician in the clinic and work with them and see if I can formulate my research project and questions around something that physicians are seeing in the clinic. So all of my stuff has kind of been surrounded by the clinic. I just don't want to be the person in the clinic.
For sure, for sure. Really, both of your touching stories. Thank you for sharing, Charu. It's so amazing to hear about both of you speak about your passions. In Charu specifically, you're doing a PhD at such a young age. I know you and I talked a little bit about this, but do you want to share a little bit about what that's been? I'm sure it's definitely not an easy task, but you've really just taken it like a champ and strive through it.
Thank you. Yeah. So I guess for those, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys really know what a PhD is. It stands for a doctorate in philosophy, which really makes no sense because what I'm doing right now is biology. But the whole idea behind it is that we are kind of philosophizing the questions and really thinking about biological questions in a more philosophical way. We're trying to figure out the what and the how and the where and the when, the why. And so the way that we approach the questions is somewhat different than what we traditionally think of. And so, I mean, I think in undergrad and even in high school, I had a lot of female role models. So a lot of my science teachers were females, and I was able to see that, okay, these guys have done this and they are happy with what they have done. And this is something that I want to pursue. So I always had a female voice kind of encouraging me. My mom also was, even though she isn't part of the medical field, she was always my number one supporter and really encouraged me to pursue both in the directions of an MD. And so the kind of degree that I chose for undergrad was kind of geared towards allowing me to kind of decide between two paths at a later point, because biochemistry is a very typical pre-med degree. And the application process of doing the PhD was gruesome and it was a difficult semester, but again, I had my professors who supported me and helped me through the process. when I came up here to visit, and during my interview, my program director, she's a complete boss of a woman. Like, she is such a powerhouse, and it was really inspiring to see how like passionate she was in talking about what she does and how she directs the program. And now that I'm here, I mean, my cohort is a total of 8, of which 7 of us are all female, and there's only one guy. And so even that just shows how I wouldn't say that the demographic of science is shifting necessarily to a more female dominant field, but I do think that there are more and more females who are realizing that, hey, this is something that we can do and that we are going to be good at doing. The PhD itself so far has been great. I've been having a great time. I am currently going through rotations where I'm exploring different labs, trying to see which will be the best fit for me to pursue my thesis project, which will be about 5-ish years, I think. So it is quite a long process, which I don't know if most people know. The average is anywhere between 5 to 6-ish years. But I will say we do get paid. So that is something that also people don't know. As a PhD student, you do get paid, and it's not all that much, but it is enough to get by on. So if you want to do school for 8 years or like for 6 years and get paid while doing it, PhD is the way to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually didn't know that about PhD students as well. It's pretty interesting because you're at school for so long. It's definitely
Yeah.
part of what they should be doing.
Yeah, and if I can add one more thing, on the topic of getting paid to do school, an MD PhD is another degree option that you can consider, which is the in-between of both an MD and a PhD. You actually get both degrees at the end of your schooling. It's generally an 8-year program, where the typical outline of it is you do your first 2 years of medical school, then you take a bit of a break for about 4 years and you do your PhD, and then you finish off the last 2 years of medical school. And by the end of that, it's been 8 years, but throughout the entire time, you are getting paid a stipend. And again, at the end of the 8 years, you will have both degrees, and you can then move on to doing either research fellowships or clinical fellowships and pursue whichever route that you felt was more suited to your interests. That's kind of where how much time you can dedicate to research versus the clinic kind of comes into play. A lot of people pick and choose depending on what stage of life they're at. A lot of the people that I've interacted with are MD PhDs who were initially very heavy on the clinical side of things, but have now shifted their gears to be more on the research side. But that gives you more flexibility and allows you to do a lot of the translational research that I feel like drives medicine forward.
Absolutely. Again, going on the topic of educating our students about what the different pathways in medicine are, do you mind talking a little bit about why it's so important that we're educating high school students, every single one of them, about what it's truly like to be in the medical field? As you know, there's so many students who enter the field at such young ages due to peer pressure, parent pressure, who might not know what the true realities, positive and negative, are of being in medicine.
Yeah, I think I think it's just important to know what you're getting yourself into and really do it for the right reasons. For myself, there was kind of that background push of, hey, maybe pursue medicine in the typical way, which is the MD. And I was lucky enough to be in an environment where even though those conversations were happening, I was still able to stand my ground and really pursue what it is that I was truly interested in. But I just think it's important, even at high school or even younger ages, to kind of just be exposed to what's out there. You don't have to make up your mind. You don't have to make up your mind even when you're an undergrad. Being in the United States, you have so many opportunities to pursue things whenever you want that you don't ever really have to make the decision right then and there. But I think that the exposure to the different fields is what's really important, so that maybe something will spark your interest and you'll want to pursue it further.
Yeah, I agree completely. Pursuing medicine is a long journey, and the sooner, it's not like a race to figure out whether or not you want to do this or that within medicine. Or even in actually the question I was asked when I started college was, are you going to be in the sciences or not? It was kind of that, it was that broad. And it was like, okay, if you're in the sciences, sign up here. I mean, it was kind of like just a first day of a certain course. I can't remember exactly the details, but that's kind of the track they put you on when you first start. So I think that that was great, just to kind of have an idea. Are you interested in that or not? And then after that, you will change your mind multiple times. I mean, almost, I've not met anyone who, knew from the very beginning exactly what type of doctor or PhD or researcher or or clinician or even any of those if they wanted to be any of those. And I met many people who switched out of it altogether and who went into it too. So really all walks of life. I had a 35-year-old classmate in my medical school, which is pretty old to start medical school because most of the time, you're coming straight out of college. So he had done engineering. He was an engineer and just decided to go. He was not a biomedical engineer. He was an engineer. I don't remember what kind. It was not in medicine. And then he just decided to go into medical school, and now he's an internist. So, and vice versa too. I mean, within some folks within a year or two of the being on a sciences track, being maybe even pre-med, may realize that no, this is really not for me. And I think it's good to kind of have an idea of whether or not you want to go into the sciences or not. That's probably where you would start. And then after that, there will be opportunities, and you should also seek them out. That okay, do I like this or that within this very broad field? And I think it's also important that if you do decide to go into medicine, that you shadow various physicians. I did this in college on summer break when I would go back home. Home was still Kentucky at the time, so I wasn't local to my college, and actually that was kind of a good thing because I kind of could get my feet wet both in Chicago and in my hometown. But that's not required. It's just something that I liked, that I could see different hospitals how they run. But I shadowed a surgeon. That was the first shadowing opportunity I could find. And I saw a surgery in my college years, like in my first summer break. That was very eye-opening. And I was actually a little bit repelled, to be honest with you, initially, because I wasn't ready mentally to see, somebody's abdomen. I just wasn't something that you could, I guess, mentally prepare for it. You just know that you're going to be in the OR and you're going to see a surgery. So, but I was still okay with it. It could be that you go into something like that, or you see blood or something like that, and you're like, oh my goodness, no, this is not for me. Because you don't have to necessarily do that. You don't have to. You could be a dermatologist, for example, and not have to deal with very much um, blood or all that. But it's still something you want to kind of expose yourself to, because the process of getting to that destination, you still have to be in the be in the OR. You have to do those rotations. You have to be in the anatomy lab. So these are just things that most of the time, everybody is fine. But if you realize this when you're already in medical school, it's kind of nice and easy to figure this out before you actually it's kind of a commitment. Once you're in medical school, assuming that you are pursuing an MD, you are not getting paid. You are paying them to be there, and it's a lot of money. I mean, the loans really pile up. So this is something that you kind of want to not to be like a highest priority, but just something to do and make sure you kind of check that box, before you move forward. And shadow physicians, find summer research jobs, get your feet wet in different subspecialties of medicine just to see it. And so there's going to be many opportunities, to change your mind. And that can be all the way through medical school. I mean, I changed my mind, like I said, in what I wanted to do, which field I wanted to do. And there's always things to fall back on. I just mentioned the thing about the loan, so I don't want that to be kind of a deterrent from pursuing medical school, because there are things like the public service loan forgiveness program, which I know there's a lot of talk about this in the news, but I have my eggs in that basket, and I'm hoping that, that does come through for me. And I even chose my job accordingly, because you have to be working in, nonprofit, like not a private practice type of group, basically nonprofit groups. So every job, everywhere that I went, I actually made sure that I could qualify for this public loan forgiveness program, public service loan forgiveness program, PSLF, public service loan forgiveness program. So there are all kinds of things. I mean, and also I would strongly encourage all of you to seek out scholarship opportunities. There are scholarship opportunities for women. There is something called AAUW, which is the American Association of University Women. And I applied for that in medical school, and I got this. I think it was like $18,000. I mean, it's actually relative to how much your cost of tuition is. It seems minor, but it all adds up. So if you apply for all kinds of scholarships. I applied for like a Papa John scholarship, applied for the Bill Gates scholarship, like the Gates Millennium Scholarship. And I had no loans. I had no out-of-pocket cost in college. So this is something really important to, kind of have a cushion so that you have some freedom of what to do if you are in that boat where you will be taking loans, like I was. It's good to seek this out.
Absolutely. I think it's so important that the students here have a backup plan, know what they're getting themselves into, and really have the advice and insight to plan for their future. So this is the great part about these workshops is they can hear from experienced individuals like yourself talking about what they should be looking for when they apply for medicine. So thank you for sharing that advice. And I do want to touch on, as an organization, we have you female role models here to inspire our girls in middle and high school. I know a little bit, both of you talked about your female role models. Have there been any mentors in your field now or even before when you were entering the field who really helped you get to where you are today?
I would say my role model is my mom. She just, um, the way she rehabilitated from her stroke for me. You don't really realize this when you're younger, in your childhood. It's very natural for us all to take our parents for granted. But to see how calmly and patiently she went through that very difficult time, and she has never complained once even about her condition to this day, makes me feel like if she can do that, then I can do this. That's kind of. But as far as role models through my training, I've thought a lot about this, after Ruby reached out to me. And to be honest with you, the role models have been male. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, because there's there there still needs to be more females in the medical field, in my opinion. I mean, there are, my medical school class was 50% female, which they really emphasized that when I started, making it seem like this is something unique. But so things are of course changing, but when I was going through all of my training, I would say almost all of my role models were actually in my professional life were male, and my mom was my female role model. So
For sure. I think what you said about how we need more females I want to follow up with why do you think it's really that important that we get more females involved in the medical field? Just, starting with how you didn't have any female role models to look up to. That's one aspect, but what can we tell the students listening here? Why is it important that they get themselves involved in the medical field?
I would say that females can be better doctors. I think they are warmer, and it's innate. We're born with this, with being, not to say that male doctors are not caring, but it's something that is just our instinct to be caring, and we really bond. It can be at a very intimate level with patients. We gain their trust. I just have witnessed this in my practice, actually, which is a fully female-run group. I'm very proud to say we are 4 movement neurologists. It's actually rare to have multiple neurologists of the same specialty. So the group that I'm in is very unique in that regard. We are 4 neurologists that have all subspecialized in the same subspecialty, which is movement disorders. So we see, a lot of Parkinson's and essential tremor and dystonia and things. Basically, these are all movement disorders. And what I see now in my practice and working with these women is very different from what I have seen up until now, which has been through all of my training, rotating in different specialties. And I just find that women have this innate ability to touch patients. And I think the first step to treating a patient is to win their trust. So if we can do that, then, it's so important for us to be there for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's beautiful what you said. And Charu, I know you talked a lot about your female teachers. So you want to just elaborate on that a little bit, and then we'll pass it over to our audience.
Yeah. So yeah, I think all through high school, I had female science teachers who kind of inspired me to pursue and continue pursuing science. And I'm still in touch with one of them today. Actually, she's my 10th grade chemistry teacher. And so I've been able to kind of update her on my progress and all the successes that I've had since I've left her class. And it's just been really heartwarming to have her as a support system. And then in undergrad, I was fortunate enough to take a class with one of the neuroscience professors there within the honors college, and she was my support all through senior year when I was applying for grad school, and even now, when I went back home to visit, I was able to meet with her and give her updates on how I was doing. And so I think I've been very lucky in having female role models throughout my education. And again, like I'd mentioned, now in my PhD program, the program director is a female, my cohort is primarily females, and it's just been really inspiring to see all of us kind of come together and do something that we're so passionate about. And then, of course, outside of that, my mom has always been my #1 supporter. And I mean, I really wouldn't be here without her. So I think I've just been very fortunate to have female role models. Of course, there's not to discount the other the male role models in my life. I mean, I've had quite a few of those as well. So but I do think that it makes it so much more real when you can see yourself when you can see someone who is like you sitting in front of you telling you that you can do it. I just think it means a lot. So yeah.
Absolutely. Here at Mission MathMinds, we love having our female role models share their stories because it's really a platform for students to see themselves in these different career fields. So I love what you said about seeing yourself in these role models because it's exactly what we do here at Mission MathMinds. So thank you again for sharing your stories. I'm going to open it up to audience for any questions they might have, anything specific. So feel free to type it in the chat, you can unmute or even turn your camera on.
I have a couple of questions. I have 3. So my first one was, what are your biggest challenges that you had to go through as a woman in STEM during college or during medical school?
I would say the biggest challenge through all of training was establishing myself, I guess I should say, because you can't see me fully, but I am a very petite woman. I'm 4'10", and just like my mom. So, I feel like, especially in those very male predominant groups, of course, um, I did achieve their respect ultimately, but I felt like I had to run doubly as fast as my male counterparts. So, and I did, and because I feel like I would have anyway, but just having that in mind and seeing how it was working, I felt that it was helpful to kind of hit the ground running. For example, in every rotation, when a new rotation starts in medical school, it's like you have 6 weeks to perform, and at the end they will give you a clinical grade, which is just based on their feeling of you. There is no test. I mean, there is a test, that's the objective part, but that is not your clinical grade. So the clinical grade is how they felt you performed face to face with them. So yeah, that was the hardest, because sometimes there is also abuse, in the training journey, because there may be people who just want to bring you down for whatever reason. Maybe they experienced this in their training, and somehow that has made it right for them to do this and pass down this so-called I suppose they may think it's a tradition or something. So there were hurdles like that. It happens to us all. There's no journey like this, which is such a long journey. It's really about the journey, not the destination. I should also say that. You have to really enjoy the process. So it's not about seeing, oh, when am I going to be done with this? It's more, once I was done with this journey, I was like, what, that's it? So I'm not going to be a student anymore. And I actually sought out more learning opportunities thereafter. So anyways, it's about the journey, but sorry, I'm sidetracking here. So yes, but that is really those were the obstacles. Like when I would come home, and I needed a very strong support system at home to kind of keep me leveled and focused on my goals, because some of those days can be extremely hard, and you will have done nothing to cause them. So that's also really important to keep in mind. Sometimes people just see this as some sort of rite of passage that they must put you through to move forward. That can be there. And I would say that's the hardest part of, because it just seems very unfair and unnecessary and distracting from your studies.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I do have a question from the chat. How did you find opportunities to intern / work in labs? I know we talked a little bit about if you have any opportunities for high school students, we can put your contact information on our website, and if you're okay with it, they can reach out to you as well. But do you want to talk a little bit about how you found opportunities to intern or work in labs? Was the question.
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about how I found lab research opportunities. I think as a high school student, you do have the options to just kind of cold email professors at your local, like whatever university is closest to you, if you're able to kind of have transport there. Just kind of email them, show them your interest in what they're doing. Usually I would say, look up the professor, see if they have a lab website, see if their research is interesting to you, and just kind of explain where you're coming from, what it is, and why you're interested in their work. They may or may not be able to take you. They may or may not respond to you. Professors are very busy. They get hundreds of emails every day. So don't feel like you did something wrong if you don't get a response. But yeah, I think as a high schooler, that's one option I can tell you guys about. I think the other thing, you guys can look out for different research opportunities that are available to you at your local, in your local area. there are some up here in Michigan that are available for, I'm not quite sure about high schoolers, but definitely for undergrads. But I mean, the internet is out there, so I would honestly just say, see what you can find. Once you're an undergrad, you will obviously be in more close contact with these professors who are doing research. So you can go up to them after class or just email them and see if they have open spots in the lab that you can either work for them or volunteer your time for them to gain experience. And there are many government-funded research internships where you'll get paid to do about 8 weeks of research over the summer. And so there are like a plethora of options for you to pursue research as an undergrad. I think at the high school stage, I would honestly say, I mean, if you're able to get your feet wet in research, great, go for it. But I think in high school, enjoy yourselves. It's hard. Classes are important, focus on your grades, and just kind of see where life takes you. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great advice. And then any last audience questions?
I have a question.
Oh, you can go.
Okay. What are some of the coolest cases you have seen throughout your career?
You said coolest cases?
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell you about one case especially because that's what made me decide to specialize in movement disorders after neurology, not stroke, because that's another subspecialty that I, originally thought that I was going to pursue. So there was a patient with multiple sclerosis, 18-year-old who I had been following in the neurology clinic in my residency, and he had a very severe tremor, and it was a very high amplitude tremor. The moment he would move his arms, this tremor would keep him from just about doing anything. I mean, he could barely hold a pen. He definitely could not write. He couldn't feed himself, couldn't dress himself. And this had been not his whole life. This was since he, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and had several progressions of that. So, it was a very sad situation that stuck with me because he was so young. And as I followed him, my attending neurologist, he guided this patient to pursue deep brain stimulation surgery, which if you Google this, you'll see what this is. It's a type of brain surgery. There are even videos online about the before and after of deep brain stimulation surgery, and this is a surgery that's done for at times done for patients with tremor. And it can be different kinds of tremor. But for this patient in particular, it was for his tremor related to his multiple sclerosis. It was called a Holmes tremor. And he got this surgery, this brain surgery, which was just done on one side of his brain to start with, to treat, it was on his left side to help with his right hand, to help him use his right hand better, because that was his dominant side. And typically that's what's done, is they'll try to treat the dominant side first, see if they respond, and eventually they can even do the other side. So I was very lucky to be there for when the patient's deep brain stimulation was turned on. He had now, you have to wait about a month to recover from the brain surgery. And so I was there for the day that it was turned on for the first time. And we didn't know how he was going to, respond, if it was going to be helpful or not. We have some idea from how the surgery went in the OR, but we didn't really know how he would clinically respond. And when it was turned on, he was able to write his name again, all in that moment. It was immediate. Like I said, I'm kind of an impatient person, and this just caught my attention completely. And I was so inspired, and I pursued movement disorders because I felt that there is so much that we can offer for patients in this field. So I specifically sought out a center where this surgery is being done, so that is being done where I work now. And we do this surgery up to twice a week. It's done very commonly with our neurosurgeons. But that was probably the most moving case. I have several others, but that's the one that shaped my life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Gira. That was really moving and inspiring to hear that that's what shaped your career. It's an awesome story. Do we have any last questions? I think I heard one before.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people say that like it's hard to achieve a work-life balance in these like really hard professions. So how would you say you have been able to balance your social life and your like educational life throughout your process?
I can take that. I think it's one that I will honestly say I'm still working on. As someone who's kind of just starting in the PhD track, there is kind of a lot to juggle with taking classes, doing these research lab rotations, as well as trying to have a social life. And I think it's just important to know when to prioritize what. And I think that is something that will stick with me as I like continue further into my PhD as well as after I graduate. And I think it really comes down to prioritizing the things that are important to you. And, you know, work is important, but I think at the same time, it is also important to remember to take care of yourselves. And if that means, taking nights off where you're just kind of alone and cooking some nice food and just like relaxing, then that's what you're going to need to do to be able to function at your fullest the next day. So I think it's just important to know, again, I'm kind of saying the same word over and over again, but know your priorities, prioritize yourselves, and don't really let, again, it's easier said than done, but don't let, I guess I would say, work kind of overwhelm you, and like don't succumb to all of the work that you have. I think Dr. Gera might just have a better outlook on this though, because I feel like you've been in the field much longer than I have.
Well, I'm also older and married, and I have a child. So I would say let's talk before I became a mom. But I agree with you completely. I think when I was, medical school is where I found that I did need to really pay attention to taking care of myself, because you could just come home from lectures and study till 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. or it could be endless. And I decided to just establish a routine every day. I'd come home, take like a certain number of minutes of break, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then get into it with studying, and kind of had a system of how long I'm going to do that before I take my next break. The brain can only go on with its attention for so long, where it needs the breaks. It's actually very fruitful to take the breaks. It's not it can seem like, oh, I'm wasting my time, by taking this break. But no, actually you are taking the break so that you will be more efficient when you go back to your work. So every day at 5 o'clock, I would go 5 p.m. I would, go and exercise for 30 minutes. And that was also another break built into my day. So I make sure that I'm not eating junk food or something just to save time. Of course, sometimes we go out and we eat what we like, and that's fine. But I was doing my best to eat healthy, making sure that I was getting my fruits or whatnot, food that I liked, but would make sure that I get it. And that's really important for us to remain healthy and move forward. Also good for the brain. And so that was me all the way up until I became a mom. After that, things get a little bit different. You are not in full control of your schedule. Your child may, keep you up at night, and it's just a part of life. Motherhood is the most rewarding and happiest thing that I've ever gone through, but it is also the most challenging. I must say, it is more challenging than the training that we did. So mostly because you are trying to keep another human, your own child, alive and happy and living a good life. So it's not just about you anymore. And now of course, you'll have a husband, and you'll be kind of have more responsibilities on your plate. That is not as concerning as it is about just being a mother, because naturally, for whatever reason, I mean, really, it's because it's innate. Again, you know, we are the ones that will be performing the childbirth, you know, so that's just natural. No one can change that. And I used to hate when my dad used to say, well, you're going to have, you know, children, so you should choose a specialty that will allow you to do that. And I used to just shut it out of my mind completely and just stay focused on what I wanted to do, which was at that time become a surgeon, which is a very busy field. So ultimately, I found a field that let me balance my work and my home life, because this is outpatient medicine that I do, and I still get to go to the OR to do those deep brain stimulation surgeries. I'm not doing them, I'm not performing them, but I am very intimately involved in them. I get to do the I mean, I essentially I have to be a part of the surgery because I do the exam on the patient, and I'm involved in the mapping process to make sure that the lead is in the target where it should be. So I'm very much getting that surgery interest, you know, in this field. So you can kind of pave the way for yourself as you move along. And you know, I would say I'm still balancing. I probably will feel that I'm always balancing my home and work life. And I think it was healthy for me to just acknowledge that to myself, because then it's not this race to achieve the balance. You know, it's just like, okay, I'm going to compartmentalize work because now I am home and I'm setting that aside and I'm focusing on my child and my family. And then when I'm at work, I'm not, you know, really paying too much attention to my phone or whatever. Everything is taken care of at home. I don't need to hear about, you know, what my son decided to eat or not eat until I get home. So you just separate the two a little bit, which I think is very healthy and allows you to focus on what your responsibilities are in that moment.
Absolutely. That's really, really beautiful advice, I think, from the both of you. I really think you can benefit everyone here. But I do want, I think we need to wrap up. We went over a little bit, but truly, thank you so much to our speakers. If everyone could unmute and give them a round of applause, I mean, this was really amazing. But I thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers again, Dr. Gera and Charu. If you do want to get in touch with them, you can talk to our team, and we would be happy to connect you with them for more opportunities. But again, thank you to everyone here. We hope that if this was your first time learning about the medical field, you're more interested, or if this is just a way to get questions, I hope they're answered. Again, thank you so much. I will be putting the link in chat to fill out the study form for a research project, but otherwise you're all free to go. Thank you so much to everyone for being here.
Thank you so much for having us, Ruby.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure. Thank you again.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.